Hello viewers, you're welcome to Lagos Global on TV, your weekly investment advocacy talk show, which provides you with first-hand information and insights on matters relating to investments in Lagos State and the activities of the Office of Overseas Affairs and Investments, popularly called Lagos Global, through our discussions, documentaries, and research. I'm your host, Temitope Oluseyi Oshin. I welcome you all once again to Lagos Global on TV. Welcome back. Just in case you're just tuning in, this is Lagos Global on TV, and today we'll be discussing sustainability of investments, global best practices, and I have a distinguished guest speaker in the house, Professor Utomi. Now, Professor, kindly provide us with insight on term sustainable investment.
Well, as you know, there are many ways that you can invest.
Okay.
A typical way that investments go into economies would be through portfolios. You know, you just go into the stock market to get gains, whether the capital or the other. You're not looking at specific investment or the other. Then you can also have foreign direct investment. Now, no matter how you choose to invest, you are constantly looking at the environment of business.
True.
You're looking at a business confidence index. The best kind of investment, no matter how we approach the investing, is one in which you can sustain the pattern of investment for the mutual benefit of you, the investor, and the sector in which you are investing, and the economy in which you are investing. And so to achieve this, a number of things happen. The investing destination tries to become competitive in terms of being able to attract and keep investment. In fact, perhaps a more interesting way to go about this is go back to a book that I wrote back in the 80s that was titled Managing Uncertainty. You know, strategy and investment in emerging economies. Now, there are economies that you come into and you have to make strategic choices.
Sure.
Now, the choice can be a generic kind of choice. One is essentially when you invest to be flexible. There was a time that amongst, say, strategy scholars, there was a question of, look, the world is changing so fast. That's flexibility is the key to it. But others within the same area, in fact, I spent a sabbatical year at the Harvard Business School in 96, 97 when this debate was raging amongst Harvard Business School professors. And one that I was very friendly with and doing some research with at that time argued that whereas flexibility can appeal, the thing that matters is really when you have commitment. And what you need is commitment for sustainability of strategy. So while the professors like Kaplan and co, who were writing about flexibility at that time, were going that way, this friend of mine, Pankaj Gemawat, wrote a book titled Commitment, in which he gave examples and said, look, the conquistadors, when they arrived in Latin America, because they wanted commitment, they burnt their boats.
Wow.
If you burn your boats, there's no going back.
True.
So you have arrived, go forward. Now, in war, some people blow up the bridge after they go forward. That means no going back. But when the bridge is there, you get to some point and there is trouble, you say, look, what's that Sam Neji's music? He who lives to fight another day, you know, you want to come back, it's okay, I can come back and fight another day, and then you go back. So commitment is something that people look up to, and a greater sustainable outcome comes from when firms have commitment as their strategy versus when they have flexibility as strategy. If you look at the experience we had as a country a few years back, when there was a lot of uncertainty about things, businessmen came in usually from South Asia, you know, and they set things up. They borrowed from Nigerian banks, made their money, abandoned everything, took off with their this thing because they were looking for flexible, quick. The Nigerian economy lost a textile industry because of that. In fact, one of my more painful examples was somebody who came in here, invested in a huge textile factory in Solo. Because policies were so uncertain, going back and forth, one day he just got tired, created his equipment, manufacturing facilities, shipped facilities to Kenya, and set up the same factory in Kenya. Today, that factory is supplying Walmart, I don't know, 100,000 or so blue jeans a day. Wow. Imagine how many young people could have had jobs in that factory. Imagine. So, an investor-friendly environment will try to create conditions that will enable that kind of man come, stay, and continue to invest so that he can sustain the investments that he made yesterday.
Yeah. Now, that takes me to this question. What are the variables that affect sustainability of investment?
A very critical variable that leads to sustainability of investments is the ease of doing business, for example. It's a very important thing. There's a ranking for ease of doing business. Any country that wants investments to flow in a sustainable manner would want to improve its rating, its ranking on the ease of doing business measure. Now, if you go beyond that, things like infrastructure are very important. Look at what is happening in China. Look at what has happened in a few Southeast Asian economies. They managed to massively commit to infrastructure development so that it facilitates how business is done and people can move and go in. Human capital. Do you have well-trained human capital available? Human beings who have the knowledge, the right attitude. It is so important to have the right human capital. We live in the age of the knowledge worker. Your costs can be reduced dramatically if your workers have the know-how and the know-why. I can give you a simple example. 40 years ago, if you lived in Detroit, you didn't have to have any education to get a very good job. All you had to do was show up at the factory, General Motors, any of these motor companies. It was fabru work, as we used to call it. You just carry this part to that part, couple it in the assembly line, and you will be paid so decently. You will have a suburban home, 2 cars in your garage, chicken in your pot of soup, and life is good.
You're living okay.
But there's a tracking of groups, categories of people. And in that tracking, the one group that has seen a sustained actual decline in their income are workers with less than high school education in America. Because those fabru work that unions argued for better wages and they were paying very well almost don't exist anymore. You go to Detroit now, all that assembly work that you were carrying the mudguard to join to this thing, they're all done by robots. The person who will work in that factory has to be able to understand enough to program those robots.
Sure.
And so he will need more than a high school education.
Sure.
So we need to invest hugely in human capital development if we're going to make the environment attractive for investments that are sustainable, that are going forward, instead of people just coming quickly to profit from our markets. We need to make the right kinds of policy choices. You know, we've been challenged recently by the kind of policies we've made around foreign exchange and all of that.
That's a huge challenge. Right?
Yeah. If we manage that kind of policy area well, it will make it easier for an investor to predict that if he brings in $1, when he's taking out $1.20 or $1.20, it's actually 1 naira. You know, next year 20 kobo is actually more than the amount of money he brought in. But if he brings in $1 million, changes to naira to do business at 197, 2 weeks later, it is
changes.
500. Now, even if he took out twice as much money as he brought in naira terms, he has lost a lot of money. So we need to manage that properly. And these things sometimes are not rocket science. Where we are today in Nigeria, all we needed to have done a year and a half ago was, look, the fact that oil prices are down does not mean that this economy is down at all. Good management of the economy would have led us to encourage governments to tax and use the taxation to create opportunity for more production so that you can tax better and use to give more. And that cycle could have, first of all, reduced the challenge of, oh, we have a problem because oil prices have fallen. But even when oil prices fall, we still were in a position, I think we started the problems that we have, we could easily have gone to a managed floating exchange rate. At the time, the difference between what is called a purchasing power parity, which is actually the buying power of your currency, and the exchange rate, the nominal exchange rate, was only about 6%. At the time we were talking, when some of us began to say, look, go quickly to a floating exchange rate, a managed floating rate, borrow some against assets that are there clearly, and make sure that you fund the market to give people confidence that you have a clear strategy of where you're going. Before you know it, people will be bringing in money to do business. But once we didn't do what we should have done, which are very simple things, there was a confidence crisis. That confidence crisis led those who had money here to begin to take cover abroad. So there was more demand than there should have been for foreign exchange. To compound it, those who had money abroad who wanted to come into Nigeria said, we don't know what's happening, let's hold on. No.
Sure.
And then it dried up. And that of its own began to force the tanking of the naira. So you need to get policies right. You need to have champions who are managing these things with commitment and who have knowledge of what is going on and exude confidence to the world that is following them. We need strong institutions. When our institutions are strong, they are more responsive. They put boundaries to conduct by public officials. Give an example. President of the United States of America says he's going to prevent people from X number of countries from entering the United States for a period of time. And the court said, no way. That's how institutions lead to boundaries being established. This gives more confidence that in spite of what seems to be happening, you can predict what you're doing. And that was really the whole subject of that book that I wrote in 1998, Managing Uncertainty. So when you do that, you can deal with the issues of competition, issues of strategy that can bring in the kinds of investments that you need to sustain economic growth.
Thank you so much, Professor Pat Utomi. Now, sit back, relax. You don't need that remote right now. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you.
The significance and impact of sustainable investments in a state or region cannot be overemphasized, as it is a force of positive change in a society with other benefits accrued. Globally, the sustainable, responsible and impact investing or socially responsible investing (SRI) approach is being used increasingly.
Lagos is the melting pot for investment and trade and commerce, beyond the bureaucratic process in which you have in government. This office is specifically, created to pay greater attention to businessmen, to investors, local or foreign, and any other person that wants to, start up any business in Lagos. We want people to be able to come into Lagos and be able to start up their business within days. They do not need to go through our bureaucratic process. So this particular office, which is directly under my own office, will be able to deal with issues that relate to investments in one location. So if you want to get your permits, if you want to get your registration, or you need land, or anything that has to do with government. That's just the place to go. And that's the only way we can, re-energize the economy.
This investing approach considers environmental, social, and governance (ESG) criteria to generate long-term competitive financial returns and positive societal impact. According to the figures presented in the Global Sustainable Investment Review, a total of $21.4 trillion was invested in strategies pursuing an SRI approach as of the end of 2014. Europe leads the way with a total of $13 trillion, followed by US investors who hold assets in this category worth $6.5 trillion. The enabling business climate being fostered in Lagos State presently through strengthened legal and regulatory framework, improved security structure, renewed infrastructure, and others has resulted in securing impactful investment state, and such investments are bound to be secured in due course.
We're hoping to be able to let investors understand that Lagos is ready for business. Lagos is open to all for investment. We want to encourage people that we are changing radically the way we do business in Lagos today, in terms of the time for turnaround, guaranteeing your investment, the protection of your investment, but overall, in terms of creating an enabling environment for investors. So it is extremely important for us to keep on selling that message to all our investors.
Several barriers exist to securing more sustainable investment in the country as a whole, but gradually these challenges are being overcome and the investment opportunities Lagos State provides is enormous and strategic. The future belongs to those whose possibilities before they become obvious. Ted Levitt. Lagos State is open for business.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is Lagos Global on TV, and I have here Professor Utomi. We've been discussing sustainability of investment, global best practices. Now, sir, what model is used to determine the sustainability of investment in the developed countries?
There's so many approaches that people take in different kinds of countries. What is very interesting about our recent experience is that you can take a model of what happened in Brazil.
Okay.
Compare with what has happened in China, in parts of... In fact, let me take a very specific example of something that I was involved with in Nigeria compared to what's happened. Early in my career, I worked for a company called Volkswagen, in which Lagos State government had an investment along with the federal government, and for VAG, Volkswagen Audi Group in the in Germany. And that company was obviously running the old import substitution industrialization strategy, which is what the country has adopted generally for its development. That logic came out of the work of a Latin American a gentleman called Raul Prebisch, who was the first executive secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America. He later became the first Director General of UNCTAD. Now, the Prebisch thesis, which famously came to be known as the Import Substitution Industrialization Strategy, ISI, essentially argued that you could take your development program, take your import list, and delete certain items so that you can produce those items locally. You can use high tariff walls, ban of imports, and all of that to protect that infant industry until you build an industrialization base, because the world out there, is being unfair in the nature of the competition, where they just take your raw materials, which suffers terms of trade challenges, and they ship you back several times the value that you would put on it, manufactured goods. And countries like Nigeria took certain kinds of products. I said, look, this product, the motor car, has a lot of inputs. If we can start producing motor cars in CKD assembly, we will have a deletion program, increase local content, therefore create a lot of jobs in manufacturing. Fine logic. The only problem is that if you take that kind of strategy and don't do the needful quickly enough to backward integrate quickly enough, you become so uncompetitive that you literally kill your people with the price of this CKD that you've imported,
True.
assembled, and you're not even creating the jobs and adding if you're not competitive after a period of time. For us, of course, we manage things fairly badly. The steel industry just never got going. Input firms that came in, I remember in my time, the manufacturers of clutches, Fictel and Sachs and all those people who came in. After a while, we were frustrated because the foreign exchange policy did not even allow the assembly plants to get enough import license to manufacture what was reasonable for their supply industry. So after a while, they closed and stopped because we couldn't coordinate the industry well. The industry was not going to transition effectively into manufacturing, real manufacturing. What had happened in Southeast Asia was that many of the Southeast Asian countries that got into ISI manufacturing very quickly turned to import-led industrialization. They began to produce those things for export. And they were very competitive that they were selling abroad what they were producing at home. When I came to work with Volkswagen at the beginning of 1986, I said this strategy that we are deploying is not working. I would rather, actually wrote in a magazine, This Week magazine it was called, that if I was in a position to, I would close down this factory. A few weeks after I went to work there, some people thought I was crazy. But one person who understood what I was talking about was then the deputy governor of the central bank in charge of economic, one Mr. Victor Odozi. And he called me and said, people like you are scarce around here. People wouldn't understand what you're saying. And I said, well, I will stay out there. Let them call me names. But our country cannot make progress with what we're doing here. We need to transition. And I suggested, I said, look, if I had my way, I would say now we have a relationship with Volkswagen because of this factory. Now we have a relationship with Peugeot because of the factory in Kaduna. Now we have a relationship with Daimler-Benz because of the factory in Enugu. Guys, we're partners. What is Nigeria endowed in? Nigeria is endowed in rubber production. We had the best yield per hectare of rubber in the world at the time. Why don't you concede to us the production of 1, 2, 3, 4 rubber components of the car for your worldwide production?
That's a good idea.
Forget about this assembly thing here. We can buy the cars from you. But we supply you these 3 rubber components for your global production. We can be the most efficient in producing it in the world to the highest quality because we have the endowments, everything.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's been such an enlightening moment on Lagos Global on TV. And I've been discussing with a legend. Wow. I'll be right back after this break.
It's amazing the transformations that have taken place. You see that increasingly most of the new investments are pouring into Asia, Southeast Asia, China, and very interestingly, an emerging Middle East.